So in this video, we are going to start talking about how to apply a basic corrective makeup for the stage. So I'm going to focus on using only like the most basic things that I feel like would be required of pretty much any performer that went on stage. So I'm going to stick to using mostly cream makeup, aside from my eyebrows, my eyeliner, my blush, and my lip product. But what I'm going to do as far as eyeshadow and highlight and contour and foundation is all just going to be creams, just because I feel like in theater that is most commonly what we use when we do a lot of our theatrical makeup, because that's what's in a lot of our theatrical makeup kits. By no means do you have to use creams. You can use powders, liquids. I usually use a combination of cream and powder in my own daily makeup, but I just wanted to at least make a few videos that kind of focus on the things that I feel like people have most commonly in their own personal makeup kits. So your very first step, which I have already done, would be to wash your face, moisturize, and then I also have a primer on. The primer that I use is called Ultra Underbase. It is by Krylon. This is a water-based primer that's really moisturizing. The foundation that I use is water-based, so therefore I'm going to use a water-based primer. If I was using a silicone foundation, then I would want to use a silicone-based primer. That's one thing that I think people make a huge mistake with when they are doing their makeup, is they don't make sure that the ingredients that is in their foundation and their concealers, that it matches with whatever primer that they're using. So that's something that can really like inhibit your makeup application. I've had times when I've used like a silicone primer or a water-based primer, and then I put the opposite thing over it, and it's just like peeled off of somebody's face. So make sure whatever you're using matches up with it. You don't have to use a primer. I have a little bit of like acne and like texture going on right now, so I like to use that primer because I feel like it kind of like fills everything in and makes my application a little bit smoother. Something else that I've done, and what I usually like to do before I start my makeup, is I make sure that my lips are moisturized too. Me personally, I can't use any kind of like chapsticks, and even like a lot of traditional lipsticks really dry my lips out. So the only thing that I have found that really works for me to keep my lips moisturized is actually just Aquaphor. So just like your classic giant tube of Aquaphor is what I have, but I love this. I use it, that's the only thing I use to moisturize my lips. I use it in the morning and I use it at night, and I never have any issues really with my lips peeling. If you don't want to put any kind of lip color on when you're on stage, I at least recommend when you're doing the rest of your makeup to put like something moisturizing, whether it's like the Vaseline lip therapy or like a little bit of Aquaphor, just something, just because sometimes like the powder and all the makeup will attach to your lips, and that can just really dry them out, and that's just not going to be comfortable if you're singing and talking and whatever it is that you might be doing. So that's my recommendation with that, especially if you are somebody who lives in like a warmer climate and you are moving somewhere a lot colder for school. Once winter comes, having something like the Aquaphor, like the Vaseline, just even put sometimes like on your face, because it just gets so cold, and with the wind your skin can get really, really dry. Having something like that really can help protect your skin. So I do recommend having some kind of moisturizer for your lips or for your face, something you could use everywhere, just because it's really going to help you out. So you want to put those things on a little bit before you start doing your makeup, just because if you immediately put on something like that, it's going to be really, really slippery. Same with a lot of primers and moisturizers, and you just need to give that like 15 to 30 seconds to kind of soak into the skin before you can really like nicely apply the rest of your makeup. So what I'm going to do for this series of videos is I'm only going to do half my face, so I'm going to focus on doing this half. Especially because I feel like a little bit more acne and things going on this side, just so you can kind of see the difference and why just doing just a little bit of stage makeup, how much of a difference it can make, just for your like overall presentation, and especially under like brighter lights and everything too. So now that I have on my moisturizers and my primers, I'm going to focus in this video on concealing and foundation, and then we'll move on to everything else in videos after this. So as far as my concealing goes, kind of looking at my own face and where I'm at, definitely I want to do something about my under eyes, because I've got a little bit of darkness here and my eyelids are discolored, and then at the end of my eye, and then I have some acne right now too. So that's what I'm going to mostly focus on, and so because those are things that are going to require color correcting, I'm going to do that before I put on my foundation. If I was just going to use something to brighten a little bit, I like to put that on after my foundation, so it kind of sits on top and makes everything a little bit brighter. But because this is something I'm going to have to use something a little bit green, I have to use something a little bit peachy to color correct and kind of balance out the colors that are there. I want to put that underneath my foundation so that I'm not turning my skin any colors that I don't want it to be. So the colors that I'm going to be using are called Dermacolor. That's the specific products that I'm using. That's by Krylon. Krylon is one of the like kind of like stage makeup brands that's out there, but they have tons of regular makeup. Most of the makeup I use is going to be Krylon, so I did used to work for them, but really you could use anything for this. I just really like these concealers because they work really, really well. They're super pigmented and they're not super expensive, and they just work really well. So I really recommend them if you are looking for a good concealer. So everything I'm using is my own personal makeup, not makeup from my kit, so I can use it directly. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and put kind of like, so this doesn't look peachy probably to you all on camera, but it is slightly peachy, just because if I use something orange under my eyes, it really turns me orange, which you can see in another video that I made. So I like to use something that's a little bit peachier. And then I like to put it on my eyelid too, especially because I'm not going to be using any powder eyeshadows. I'm just going to be using the creams that I have. I really want to make sure that I knock out that discoloration. And so you can see I didn't go in and like completely cake this area. I really like to just keep the concealer to like right here and on the edge, and then I kind of blend everything else into where it needs to be. So that's all I'm going to use for this peachy color. And then for these spots that are a little bit red, I have a greenish concealer, but you can see it's not like a super like minty green, it's more of like a skin tone green. And because I'm doing something that's more specific, and it's not going everywhere, I'm really trying to just like concentrate it on those areas, and I'm pressing it onto my acne. Because if I just like wipe it across my face, you can see that's like a much thinner application, whereas that's really concentrating on that pimple. And you can see here I just kind of have some general redness, so I'm just going to press it in. If you're pressing something like this onto your face, it's going to give you a lot better coverage than if you're just like pulling it across. So I'm going to go ahead and get super bright. That always happens to me. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of press this everywhere. I'm still figuring out my lighting, y'all, so please bear with me for all of that. And then my nose gets pretty red, and so for this I don't want it to be super cakey, so I do kind of pull that and shear it out a little bit. And then, so I have a lot of redness, so you'll see me doing things like this where I kind of just take like a veil of color over my entire face. If it was just those little pimples, then I would just do those spots, but I have a lot of redness, so I kind of do it all over my face. And so to blend it out, I like to use kind of like stubbier brushes like this. So I like something like this just because I feel like when the bristles are a little bit denser, that helps you to really like pack things on if you're powdering, because you can also use this to powder, but it also helps to just kind of like really press it into your skin. So you could use your hands. A lot of people like to use like their pinky finger under their eye. I am trying to show you all the most sanitary way to do this, so I am not going to use my hands on my face. If you are ever doing someone else's makeup, you really shouldn't be doing that, just because it's really, really not sanitary and not great, even if your hands are sanitized, to be touching someone else's face. And then in these areas, I'm going to try really hard not to go on like the actual pimple. I'm just going to work my way around it. So I'm going to look a little patchy and weird, just because I only have concealer in like smaller areas and not everywhere, but I'm going to go back over this with foundation and kind of bring everything back together. But in these spots, I really don't want to lose any of that coverage I got, so I'm just trying to really carefully blend it around that. And so when I'm talking about blending, I always like to think of it as just making like little circles, and those little circles are going to help work the makeup into your skin without pulling it back off. Okay, and so you can see just a little bit of concealer, it really does make a huge difference. I look much more tired on this side than I do on this side. So really you don't have to put on a ton. Each of those concealers that I just used cost me like $5.75. So they're not super expensive. It doesn't have to be anything crazy fancy, just a little bit will really make like a huge difference, because you can already see like this side down matches my neck a lot better than this side where I've got like a lot of redness and discoloration. So one thing that you're going to find sometimes with acne is that when you go to put your foundation back over it after you've like kind of spot concealed it, it just pulls it back up. It's because it's so textured, and also just because there's a lot of oil on your acne. So I like to come in with just like a little bit of my powder, and I just powder those areas really, really lightly. If you put too much, it's going to get a little bit too cakey, but I like to put just a little bit of powder in those spots just so that it holds once I go back and put my foundation over it. So unfortunately I'm going to end up putting blush and everything over this, so it's going to bring it back a little bit, but at least this is going to help that initial layer of concealer kind of stay on when I go back and put my foundation over it. So now that I've got on my color correcting concealer, I'm going to go ahead and put on my foundation. So when I put on my foundation, I use a pretty small foundation brush just because this is like what I'm used to. It's more of like a concealer brush, but generally like this kind of shape is what you're going to be looking for. And then as far as like where you apply it, I usually just put like a little bit on my forehead, a little on my chin. I go back over my eye with it. I probably go a little too heavy with this stuff sometimes, but again, you're just going to kind of put it in these like key places, and then I will usually end up blending a little of it down onto my neck too, just to make sure that everything is uniform. And then you can use like little X motions to kind of help it blend into your face. And again, if you just kind of go back and forth with it, that's going to help that like initial blend in application, and then I go back in with another kind of brush just to blend it back out. And so this is the foundation I've been using for quite some time, so I know that it's the right color for me, but if you weren't sure, my favorite place to test for foundation is like right here, and then I would take it like this and then really like blend it and work it into the skin, just because you want to make sure that that disappears. So that has a pretty seamless blend, and that's what you're looking for when you are testing your foundation. So if you just put on a big stripe and you're like, that'll work, it might not look the same once you blend it out. So you always want to try to work it into your skin when you are going in and kind of testing for new foundations. Okay, so now that this is kind of like applied everywhere that I want it to be, I'm going to go back in and like really blend it out. So again, I really like these like stubby foundation brushes just because I feel like this density really helps with blending. You could use a beauty blender, your regular sponges, however you want to do it. The most important thing is just kind of the motion. I always feel like you can like apply things however, it's just all about how you blend it out. That's really going to make the biggest difference. So you can kind of like see that I'm doing just like little circles when I'm doing this. Down the neck, you usually end up having to pull it down a little bit to really get it to apply evenly, but you can just kind of go across your entire face and just do these little circles just to help blend it out. And then be really careful when you are around your eye, just because the eye area is a lot more sensitive and the skin is a lot thinner, and you just have to be careful around there. And so we're not going to set this yet because we're going to do a cream contour and a cream highlight with it, but you can just see probably after a little bit more blending and touch-ups with just a little bit of foundation and a little bit of concealer makes a huge difference. So if this is all you do, if you're getting like headshots taken or you're going on stage, you can see that there's like, you know, technically, you know, there's like nothing wrong with this side of my face, but under like all the lighting and everything, this is just going to read a lot better just because it kind of like evens me out and takes out like all the redness and everything from my allergies and not sleeping enough and all of those things. And it gives you just a little bit of coverage, and it doesn't take that much time. So at this point, I'm going to keep blending it a little bit, and then in the next video, we are going to talk about highlighting and contouring our faces, and also the eye area as well, and then we will keep moving forward.